At exactly 1:14 a.m., my world shifted, not with an earthquake or a siren, but with an email subject line that simply read, "I moved the money. It's better this way." My name is Elliot Granger, a 56-year-old residential designer from Flagstaff, Arizona. I just finished polishing up blueprints for a retirement cottage project when I noticed the notification on my screen. The message came from my wife Valerie, supposedly in Sedona for a holistic wellness retreat she'd begged me not to join. Attached was a grainy photo, her on a balcony, wine glass in hand, pressed shoulder to shoulder with a man I didn't recognize. The Arizona sunset cast a glow over them, but it was her smile that froze me. Wide, free, a kind of happiness she hadn't shown around me in years. The body of the email was even colder than the subject line. "I've moved your inheritance into my personal checking. It makes more sense this way. We'll talk when I'm back. Don't overreact." Overreact? I stared at the screen as if it would offer a different version the longer I looked. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust, or whatever fragments of it remained after 30 years of marriage. The $612,000 she referred to wasn't some windfall. It was the last gift my older brother Calvin left me before passing from liver cancer 6 months earlier. A man who'd raised me after our parents died, who never married, never had kids, because, in his words, "You were always my family." I stood from my desk and walked barefoot across the wood floors we'd installed together back in '99. Our dog, Sage, lifted her head from the couch but didn't move. I reached the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and stood by the window, looking out at the backyard we'd landscaped together. All of it. The terraced garden, the fire pit, the bench beneath the cottonwood, suddenly felt like a museum exhibit of a life curated more for appearance than affection. How long had she been planning this? What else had she taken? But the most haunting question wasn't about the betrayal. It was the quiet that followed. No calls, no apology, no explanation, just that email. And something unexpected happened as I stood there in the stillness. I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I didn't crumble. I exhaled deeply. And for the first time in years, I realized I might actually sleep better knowing she wasn't coming back. What do we lose when the people closest to us betray not just our trust, but the memory of those who made us who we are? And more importantly, what do we discover about ourselves when silence is all they leave behind? The morning after the email, I woke up in the guest room. Our bedroom, once filled with the scent of fresh linen and Valerie's lavender lotion, had become something else entirely. I couldn't sleep beneath sheets that still carried her warmth. I needed distance. I needed clarity. What I didn't need was another lie whispered into my ear while she packed for another so-called wellness escape. Over coffee, I scrolled through the shared drive Valerie and I used for home projects. We kept floor plans, appliance warranties, and the folder labeled Backyard Redesign 2023. My eyes stopped on a subfolder titled Budget Options. Buried inside were screenshots of my bank accounts, accounts she wasn't supposed to have access to. I clicked one. It was a full routing number, another, transfer instructions. Then, a crude photo of a whiteboard with handwritten numbers. $612,000, 20% equals transfer fee? She wasn't just reckless, she was deliberate. I leaned back, the chair creaking beneath me, and stared at the ceiling. What had happened to us? 15 years ago, Valerie and I met at a regional arts festival in Santa Fe. I was showcasing sustainable cabin models. She was selling herbal tinctures from her new wellness startup. She had this spark, wild, magnetic, earthy. We'd talk for hours about healing spaces and holistic design. She used to say I drew homes the way poets wrote sonnets. We got married in under 2 years. Bought a fixer-upper in Flagstaff with a wraparound porch and too many squirrels in the attic. No kids. Her choice. Children dilute energy, she once said, mid-yoga pose. My business is my legacy. For a while, we were unstoppable. I designed eco-resorts. She expanded her product line across 3 states. We hosted friends, traveled the Southwest, even published a joint blog called Earth and Shelter. It all felt so intentional, so alive, until it didn't. Looking back, it began to shift around the time my brother Calvin got sick. The diagnosis came fast, the decline faster. I spent 5 months driving back and forth to Phoenix to care for him. Valerie visited twice, each time staying less than 2 hours. Hospitals mess with my frequency, she explained. The energy is too heavy. I didn't argue. I didn't have the strength. After the funeral, when the attorney told me Calvin had left me everything, I wept, partly from grief, partly from disbelief. He'd saved and invested quietly for decades. I had no idea the amount was so large, but Valerie did. That same night, she brought up reinvesting into growth. Our retreat space, she said. We could buy the land this time, go fully off-grid, a tribute to your brother. I nodded, unsure, and changed the subject. But the seed had been planted. Over the next 2 months, things deteriorated. Her phone was always face down. Her passwords changed. When I asked about our accounts, she redirected with wellness jargon, chakras, realignment, spiritual flow. None of it answered my questions. Every time I got too close to the truth, she pulled away. Then one afternoon, our neighbor, Mr. Daly, mentioned something in passing. Saw Valerie being dropped off by some fella last week. Gray SUV, didn't look like a delivery. I paused. I thought she took her car to Sedona. He blinked. Oh, maybe I'm mistaken. But he wasn't. She'd lied about where she was. And more than that, she'd brought someone else home. I didn't respond with fury. I responded with stillness. Because now I understood what I was really up against. Not just betrayal, but a carefully constructed life built on half-truths and spiritual detours, designed to make me doubt myself while she stripped everything away. And I was done doubting. The next morning, I made 3 phone calls, each one quiet, deliberate, and necessary. First, I called Mark Henley, my financial advisor for over a decade. I didn't explain much, just asked if we could review my trust accounts and monitor any unusual activity. Mark, ever the calm presence, said he'd call me back within the hour. Second, I called Eliza Stone, my late brother's estate attorney. She'd managed Calvin's affairs with precision and compassion, and I knew she'd do the same for me. Third, I texted Valerie, "Got your message. We'll talk when you're back." She never responded. By noon, Mark called back, his voice unusually tight. "Elliot, someone tried to access your irrevocable trust 3 times over the past 6 weeks. The system flagged it each time. Wrong security questions, wrong devices." "Location?" I asked. "Flagstaff?" "And one attempt from Sedona." So she had tried, and failed. The trust my brother Calvin set up had held strong. I was grateful. Grateful that in his final days, he had anticipated this world wouldn't always treat me kindly. Later that day, Eliza called. I explained everything, from the email to the neighbor's comment about Valerie being dropped off by someone else. "She committed attempted financial fraud," Eliza said bluntly. "If the trust hadn't been protected, she would have siphoned off over $500,000, and there would have been very little you could do about it. I don't want revenge," I told her, "but I do want this stopped. Then let's document everything, right now." Together we began building a file, email printouts, screenshots of the shared drive, timestamps from the access attempts. I added my own handwritten notes. Every red flag I'd ignored now had its place in the record. That night, I sat on the back porch, staring out at the stars. Arizona skies were always clear this time of year, wide and exposed, as if daring you to hide anything. The wind moved through the cottonwoods gently, as if whispering things I wasn't ready to hear. Valerie returned 3 days later. She didn't come home right away, just sent a text. Can we meet somewhere neutral? I don't want drama. Drama? That's what she called this? I didn't reply. Instead, I contacted Samuel Bright, a divorce attorney Eliza had recommended. Samuel specialized in high-asset marital dissolutions and had a particular reputation for handling cases involving financial misconduct. His office was in a modest adobe building near the courthouse. Nothing flashy, but every inch felt precise, intentional, just like his approach. She's crossed the line from carelessness into calculated theft, he said, reviewing the evidence. The trust is intact, but the attempt is prosecutable. You want to go after her criminally? I shook my head. Not unless she forces my hand. Then we'll start with divorce, he said, tapping a pen. On the grounds of financial misconduct and breach of fiduciary duty, Arizona allows fault-based arguments if there's enough proof, and we have more than enough. He slid over a draft petition. She doesn't know it yet, but she's already lost. I took the document home and read it 3 times. The words weren't cruel. They were clinical. But between the lines, I saw it clearly. This was the end of a shared history I'd spent years building, one blueprint at a time. That evening, I received another message from Valerie. I'll be staying with friends for a while. I think space is good. Good for who? I wondered. I didn't answer. Instead, I uploaded every document into a secured folder and began the process of changing every password, every PIN, every point of vulnerability. She had moved against me in silence. I would respond in silence, but with precision. The next day, Samuel filed the petition with the court and served Valerie at her supposed friend's address. Within hours, she called me. You blindsided me, she hissed into the phone. You didn't even talk to me first. Like you did? I asked calmly. That inheritance wouldn't even exist if we hadn't built our life together. No, I replied. It exists because my brother worked his entire life and gave it to me. You had no part in it, and you tried to steal it. You're twisting everything. I'm protecting what's mine. She went quiet. You've always been so calculated, she finally said. No, I told her. I've been trusting. That's different. And you've run out of space to confuse the two. I ended the call without another word. Afterward, I walked through the house, touching the walls I had sanded, the shelves I had built, the floors I had restored. Valerie hadn't taken just money. She tried to rewrite the meaning of this home, of my memories, of my brother's final gift. But she'd failed. And now, I would make sure she never got another chance. 3 days after the divorce papers were served, Valerie's tone changed. Gone was the cold defiance. She started texting short messages, then longer ones, then voicemails that oscillated between anger, guilt, and charm. I was emotional. I didn't mean to actually move anything. You're overreacting, Elliot. We can work this out like adults. Please call me. Don't let lawyers ruin everything we built. But the words were hollow, because by then I knew the full scope of what she'd done. Samuel had subpoenaed our joint account history from Red Ridge Credit Union, and what we uncovered painted a picture far worse than I had imagined. Valerie had opened a separate account under her maiden name nearly a year ago. Over the course of 8 months, she had siphoned a total of $184,000 from our shared account, starting with small $2,000 transfers, then increasing to $12,000, $25,000, and eventually a single withdrawal of $47,000 just 4 weeks before she sent the infamous email. That money had been routed to an address in Sedona, an apartment registered in her name alone. A quick search revealed it was a rental condo frequently used for long-term wellness stays. Except She wasn't alone. Attached to several of her transactions were payment memos, retreat supplies, joint business expense, rental reimbursement, and then the one that shifted everything inside me, J. Wren Studio Renovations. I recognized the name. Jonas Wren, a yoga instructor who'd once partnered with Valerie for a small retreat in Prescott. She'd mentioned him once or twice, casually, flippantly, never enough for me to suspect anything deeper. But now it was all there in writing. And just to be sure, I asked my neighbor, Mr. Daly, for a favor. The next morning, he came over with a folded piece of paper. "My son's got a decent camera," he said. "Didn't think you'd mind." He handed me a photo, Valerie and Jonas standing beside my garage, her key in hand, his hand on her waist. They weren't trying to hide. They weren't worried if someone saw. They assumed I'd never know. That same day, Samuel's office received a call from Amanda Kerr, a junior associate working under Valerie's newly hired divorce attorney. She requested a preliminary meeting to avoid escalation. We agreed. The meeting took place at a conference room downtown. I didn't bring anger. I brought evidence. Samuel began by laying out a thick file of documents, detailed banking records showing repeated unauthorized withdrawals, account registration under a false name, a notarized statement from Mr. Daly confirming Jonas's frequent visits, photos from our shared drive, proving Valerie had planned the inheritance theft for months, and finally, a printout of the access log from the trust fund's monitoring software, complete with IP addresses and failed login attempts traced back to both our home and her Sedona apartment. Amanda went pale. Valerie said nothing. Her mouth opened slightly, but her voice caught. Samuel leaned forward. "Your client has committed financial misconduct. She attempted to access funds not legally hers. She removed joint assets to an undisclosed account. And she concealed a secondary residence, which she shared with a romantic partner while still married." Amanda's response was automatic. "We'll need time to review." "You have until Friday," Samuel cut in, calm but firm. "After that, we file for a court hearing, with full exposure." On the drive home, Valerie called. "You had no right to ambush me like that," she snapped. "I made mistakes, but you're making this cruel." "Cruel?" I repeated. "You call emptying our accounts and lying about another man a mistake?" "I was trying to find myself again," she shouted. "Jonas understands me. He listens. You were always somewhere else, in your head, in your work." I let the silence drag. "Elliot," she said, softer now, "we can settle this, quietly, without dragging each other through the mud." "We will settle," I said, voice level, "but not on your terms." Click. That evening I walked the perimeter of the house. The hydrangeas in the back were blooming, Valerie's doing years ago. It was the one thing she tended to herself. But even beauty fades when it's built on deception. Inside, I poured a glass of whiskey and sat at the table. The pile of evidence rested beside me. I had done what I was never good at, looked beneath the surface, past the vision board smiles, the incense and affirmation cards. I had seen her, finally. And now it was time to let the law do what my heart no longer could. Draw the line between what once was and what would never be again. The morning of the scheduled court hearing, I arrived early, alone. I didn't wear black. This wasn't a funeral. It was a reckoning. The courthouse smelled faintly of lemon disinfectant and decades-old paper. I sat in the consultation room with Samuel, sipping coffee from a styrofoam cup, reviewing the agreement we had prepared the night before. "Think she'll fight it?" I asked. Samuel didn't look up. "Not after what we sent her legal team." That "what" included everything: bank records, property leases, IP logs, and even a signed affidavit from Mr. Daly, our neighbor. The evidence of deceit wasn't just overwhelming, it was airtight. At 9:17 a.m., Valerie and her attorney arrived. She wore a beige pantsuit, her hair swept back too tightly, lips pale. She looked like someone trying very hard not to appear defeated, and failing. Her attorney, Amanda, carried a leather folder. She offered a courteous nod before taking a seat across the table. "No need for a hearing," Amanda began. "My client is prepared to accept the settlement terms you outlined in yesterday's correspondence." Samuel raised an eyebrow. "All of them?" Amanda gave a tight smile. "With one minor clarification. The repayment of funds will be completed in two parts, 45,000 within 24 hours and the remaining within 10 business days." I nodded. "Fine." Samuel slid the final agreement across the table. "Your client will also sign the non-disclosure clause. She will make no further claims on Mr. Granger's inheritance, nor publicly discuss this divorce, its details, or his name in any professional capacity. Ever." Valerie's hand trembled slightly as she picked up the pen. She didn't speak, didn't look at me, just signed. Then she looked up. "And what happens to everything else? The house?" "You keep the SUV," Samuel replied, "and the jewelry, and the remaining joint account balance, after repayment. Elliot retains the house, the cabin in Oak Creek, and the foundation assets." Valerie blinked. "Foundation?" I met her eyes for the first time in weeks. "Calvin's money isn't just sitting in a bank anymore. I started a foundation last month, named after him. It'll fund design scholarships for kids who lost their parents like I did." She froze. "I figured if someone's going to benefit from his legacy," I continued, "it sure as hell won't be the woman who tried to steal it." Amanda cleared her throat. "Are we done here?" Samuel nodded. "We are." I stood, gathering my folder. As I turned to leave, I stopped and pulled a small envelope from my jacket. I placed it gently on the table in front of Valerie. "What's this?" she asked. "The security codes," I said. "For the alarm system, the garage, and the shared cloud drive, in case you forgot anything." She opened her mouth to speak, but nothing came. Her lips quivered slightly. Then she looked away, gripping the envelope as if it burned. I walked out without another word. That afternoon, I went home. Not to mourn, but to begin again. The first thing I did was walk through every room, opening windows, letting the stale air out. I played jazz on the old record player, poured myself a bourbon, and spent the evening deleting shared calendars, shared accounts, shared digital ghosts. The next day, Valerie's first payment arrived, $45,000, just like she promised. 10 days later, the rest followed, $44,000 and change. No message, no apology, and none needed. I deposited the money directly into the Calvin Granger Design Fellowship. By the end of the week, we awarded our first grant to a 17-year-old named Rosalie Pierce, a high school senior from Gallup, New Mexico, who had lost both parents in a house fire. Her application essay was titled "Spaces That Listen." Calvin would have loved her. Samuel called that weekend to tell me Amanda had filed notice of completion with the court. "It's official," he said. "You're free." Free. It didn't feel like fireworks or champagne. It felt still, like walking through the woods after a storm. On Sunday, I received an envelope in the mail. No return address. Inside was a check for $4,112.47, along with a single line, handwritten, "The rest of what I took, no strings." I stared at it for a long time, then folded it neatly and slid it into the fellowship account binder. One more scholarship, one more step forward. That night, I stood out on the back porch, the air cool, the stars sharp in the desert sky, and felt the silence differently. It wasn't emptiness, it was peace, and for the first time in years I let myself feel it, all the way through. 6 months later, the house on Pine Hollow Lane was no longer mine. I didn't sell it out of anger or spite. I sold it because it had become a place filled with echoes, half conversations, forgotten laughter, doors that still creaked from the hands of someone I no longer knew. Valerie's favorite hydrangeas bloomed out front that spring, defiant and unaware. I left them intact. Let them be someone else's memory now. The buyers were a young couple with twin toddlers. They loved the open layout and the backyard fire pit. I left behind the wind chimes Valerie had insisted on hanging near the kitchen window. The woman smiled when she saw them and said they made the space feel peaceful. I didn't disagree. I moved into a loft downtown, exposed brick, tall ceilings, walking distance to my office. I brought only what I needed: a reading chair, a record player, 3 boxes of books, and Sage, my old golden retriever who'd weathered this storm as quietly as I had. I didn't bring wedding photos. I didn't bring souvenirs from Sedona retreats or yoga incense holders. Those belonged to a different life, one I no longer carried. My days became simple. Early mornings with black coffee and a walk with Sage, late afternoons drafting projects that mattered again. I started volunteering twice a month with the architectural fellowship we created in Calvin's name. I met Rosalie in person at our first ceremony, bright eyes, steady voice, full of ideas about healing through design. She reminded me of something I'd nearly forgotten: that purpose isn't given, it's built. Sometimes people ask me if I ever heard from Valerie again. I didn't. Not really. Just that check, just that line. The rest of what I took. No strings. It wasn't redemption. It wasn't closure. But it was enough. A few weeks ago, I got a text from Mark, my financial advisor. "Dinner still on for Thursday? Bringing that architect I told you about?" I texted back, "Yes." I wasn't sure if it was a setup or just a meal, and honestly, it didn't matter. Not anymore. I changed before heading out: button-down shirt, clean shave, no expectations. As I walked to the restaurant, a gentle breeze rolled down from the mountains. For a brief moment, I stopped outside the door and looked up at the evening sky. There was no drama, no grand epiphany, just a quiet truth I finally understood. Valerie may have tried to rewrite our story, but I got to write the ending. And that made all the difference. As we grow older, many of us come to believe we've seen the worst life can throw at us, but betrayal from someone we once loved can still cut deeply. Elliot Granger's story reminds us that betrayal isn't just about broken promises. It's about reclaiming dignity when someone tries to steal more than just money. They try to steal your peace, your memories, your identity. But healing doesn't come from revenge. It comes from choosing what to build next. For older adults, especially those who've weathered long relationships or loss, this story offers a quiet but powerful truth. It's never too late to draw boundaries, protect what matters, and start over with purpose. Whether it's by turning grief into legacy or by shedding the weight of someone else's deception, there's strength in stillness and wisdom in walking away with grace. You don't need to shout to reclaim your life. Sometimes, the loudest answer is simply moving forward. Let this be a reminder: your legacy isn't what others leave you, it's what you choose to build with what remains.